Hello out there. I'm the oldest nerd. Today, once again, we feature two old men in t-shirts talking movies with Professor O. Professor, we are here with a talk about Blade Runner this time, and you already have your Nostromo shirt, which we'll have to talk about in a future video, I guess.
Absolutely. Yep.
But we're both fans of Ridley Scott, are we not?
It's an homage to Ridley Scott, no matter how you cut it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think that Blade Runner has to be maybe the ultimate noir science fiction. I mean, Alien was kind of like that, but this really has everything from the hard-boiled detective type of thing to the way they did the lighting and the dystopian city and things like that. I thought that had more mood. In fact, I think Roger Ebert said about it had more mood than it had plot.
And that's funny that you mentioned. I had that quote kind of called up too. And right, noir, femme fatale, the cigarettes, smoke, night.
Yeah.
It's funny. The femme fatale doesn't necessarily do all the functions that the classic one does, but it is absolutely a noir. And Roger Ebert, when I read that, I thought that's the reaction of somebody who's seen this film once. And this film gets better with every viewing. And I think that was a problem that some of the early reviewers had. I know here we are talking about reviews of the films, kind of one of the later things you talk about. But even same thing with me. I watched it the first time in '82, and I'm like, okay, that was a good film. But the themes, it just takes some repeated viewing for those themes to percolate upward. And I just think, I bet you, I was thinking if Roger Ebert reviewed that in 2007, like 20 years later, I think he would, 25 years later, I think he would give it a very different review.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that he would. I think that certainly it has held its own in time, with the exception of a few details. For instance, they still had AT&T in their future and phone booths, something we don't see anything anymore.
The phone booths. They're not the first to have missed on that. William Gibson, in making Neuromancer, missed on that too. In writing that, he has a part of that story where our hero goes by 18 phones, runs by 18 phones, and they all ring in succession, every single. And he thought, if I'd have just had somebody's trying to get a hold of him, and it would have been a lot easier with they just had neither. You're right. They did not anticipate the cell phone.
Yeah, and we still don't have flying cars. I mean, that's my disappointment of the future. Yeah, we don't have talking dogs. We don't have skateboards that hover and cars that work on uranium. But other than that, they say the future isn't what it used to be.
Well put. Well put. We don't, the amount of smoke and flame that and of course you can always say that LA in the fire season is going to look a lot like the LA of Blade Runner. But some of the dystopia in terms of we certainly, you could say we certainly have more of a corporate type of dystopia with the Tyrell Corporation. That type of control is more prevalent, although it certainly was in '82, and that's how they're predicting that kind of future. Environmental dystopia, it's I would say they're spot on with some of that. It's not as bad as what they projected for 2019. But it's still, you could say that they're in terms of projecting the general future, they've got some good points about what's happening to the environment.
Yeah, interesting thing about
the company.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the smoke, though, was that it was a workaround because Ridley Scott wanted to build sets, and they didn't have enough money in the project in order to build everything that he wanted built. So they went to the back lot, and what they did was they modified the existing New York scene buildings. And it looked so cheesy, they had to have the smoke to kind of hide the fact that they were cheesy add-ons to existing buildings.
It's funny in the documentary that there's a terrific documentary that goes with the 3 DVD edition that you and I both have. That in the
Yes.
documentary he talks about that. I think he's a little sensitive to the amount of money that they spent because they fell behind in terms of shooting schedule, which of course leads to budgetary problems. They fell way behind, but he pointed out, he said, look at the money I saved by using this smoke as a workaround,
Yeah.
shooting at night, backlighting the whole thing. Because he said, if I tried to make this miserable New York, old NYC set that we've seen in so many movies, that
Yeah.
by 1982 you as a viewer would recognize, you'd say, oh, that's part of Police Squad. You might, with Leslie Nielsen, that would not have been funny.
But there's an exception to that they use the Bradbury building. And even the studio was saying, you don't want to use the Bradbury building. It's been used in every film. And yet it was in such a state of actual decay that it was perfect for what they were doing.
Right. Oh, and it sounded that they would for that building they could have at it from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. But they did even though it was in a state of decay, they added cork. It was another workaround to the floors, and the cork gave this grunge look on the floors. And then they had so much rain. That was the other missing thing. Right, rain, smoke,
Yeah.
backlighting, night, and then they could just sweep up the cork at night and have it ready. Well, I say at night. They'd be doing that at 5 a.m. in the morning so that the building would be ready for its tenants the next day.
Yeah, and of
Just
course the cork
nuts.
kind of absorbed some of the water too. So really, all they had to do was mop up. It wasn't as bad as it might have been had they not used cork. But what's
That's
interesting,
exactly right.
yeah, what's interesting about that building, though, I mean, it's beautiful architecture to begin with, and it does have a certain retro futuristic look to it. And it was one of my favorites in there, and probably the only location shooting they did in the whole film.
Right. Probably exactly. The only look I would say that's true. The rest is on sets, backlots, some studio sets, the backlot. Just phenomenal. I gotta admit, when they added in at every level of how much they had the costume designer said, we ruined so many costumes because of the rain.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, by the time you're shooting all night, you've got the rain, the smoke. Is it cheaper to grunge up? But it was perfect for this film. The noir look, absolutely unbelievable. And I really like the next Blade Runner 2049, but it just does not have that same look. It wants to have that
No.
same look, but it does not have that same look. And that's what it's funny. The documentary is made in 2007, and by then we're deep into the digital age. And so even now, of course, we're even more. It's 18 years later. Now
Yeah.
we're deeper into the digital age. But even in 2007, they were constantly saying you just can't get the same look with digital as you get with this smoke, fire, cigarettes, food, noodles, everything is just right in front of the camera in its own gritty, realistic world of 2019. Just,
Yeah, I understand that even the DVDs don't do well because when they had to digitize the film, there are some things of comet trails and things like that on some of the lighting that they could not work out because it worked fine on film, but did not work on video due to the fact of I don't know the technicals of it, honestly.
that's amazing that makes sense. We're kind of getting it. The practical effects on set are just unbelievable. And God, last time when we talked about the Andromeda strain, there and those effects were unbelievably advanced. This
Yes.
this is 11 years later, from 71 to 82. Of course, one thing it's been fun too is in our journey is the different types of effects. We're looking at the microscopic world of the Andromeda strain, and then we
Yes.
looked at early computer animation with Tron, which comes out of the same summer as Blade Runner, which is astounding, um, with its type of futuristic early computer animation. And then this film looks like nothing else. It is like in its own way, it's like 2001, uh,
Yes.
in world building for a world of 2019, a dystopic world. And it just, oh, and the special effects, a lot of matte work. The matte paintings are fantastic. They are so good. I don't even sometimes I don't even thinking of them as matte paintings. I'm just looking at the world of Blade Runner. But watching the special effects, how they're done, then you see the matte paintings and they're incredible.
I don't remember the name of the fellow who was who built the some of the props, the spinner, for instance, their hover car. But he did such a
Yeah.
great job. Ridley Scott wanted him to do the backgrounds because what he did was in building some of the props, he sketched out what he was going to do, and the background was so good that Scott wanted him to do that for the film, and it cost an extra. $150,000 a day to have him on set to do that, and that's one of the reasons that the film went so over budget. Although
Right.
the
Wow.
studio didn't get upset until they had gone past like 20 million, and then they say you go 2 million more over this, we're going to take control of it. And he went like 3 million over. So
It was close. He was close to being replaced. They talk about this. The original writer was replaced. Who adapted Blade Runner, and do androids dream of electric sheep. He falls in love with that,
right,
and neat guy, and he has a great sense. He hated being replaced. He was arguing for various points against Ridley Scott. And at a certain point, Ridley Scott says the easiest thing to do is, in his own polite way, British polite way, is take you out.
yeah,
And but apparently, speaking of what you were saying with those budget overruns, even Ridley Scott, I think it was Bud Yorkin, who hadn't directed in a bit, and you can just see it quietly. The documentary is fascinating. It talks about, you can just see these different points of view, and a couple of the producers behind, you could tell they're feeling that Bud Yorkin wants to direct. That Bud Yorkin denies it, but at a certain point, it was getting that scary about how far behind and this everything was expensive, but just the number of days that they were behind that
yeah,
was causing huge budget overruns. How much longer you originally project to pay all your actors a really good cast, and you say we're going to pay them for this many days,
yeah,
but when you're paying them for three times the amount of days, and some of the actors are standing around, Harrison Ford would get kind of grumpy not being able to act, and just staying in his trailer. Well, you're paying him to do that, and that's how you go over budget.
yeah, and
And that
and
became a real problem. Uh,
yes,
yeah. And so Bud Yorkin at some point, that was the interesting thing. And I imagine you've come across this too. Just working with Ridley Scott, he's absolutely obsessed. He is very much not a team player. He says the
yes,
same. He says, "I'm the director. This is what you hired me to do. I'm not there on set to consult with many people at all, if anybody. It's my vision. I'm taking the heat if it fails. All the things, all the work he puts into,
yes,
and the members of the crew that can go, and then you add on, you go, okay, well, some directors, a lot of directors are like that. Not all are like that, but then you go along with him, and just the amount of danger, pain, boredom, uh, all those things that can be caused by waiting around for the rain, the smoke, the fire, everything to be perfect, and the slow shooting schedule. And then he also didn't really appreciate the American crew. He learned to like American crews, I think, but he really liked the British crew.
Well,
Have you
yeah,
come across that too?
I have. I mean, in Alien, he did all of the Steadicam shots, or wasn't Steadicam shots. He had a
Mm,
handheld camera, and he didn't like the
right.
Steadicam because it's too big. But he wanted to do all his own shooting, which of course are against the union rules in U.S. Movie making. So he was perturbed about that.
Right.
He didn't like the idea that everybody on the crew had an opinion about something, and he said that in England he was used to "Yes, Governor," and that was all he ever heard from the crew. And so they even had some T-shirts made that said, "Yes, Governor, I'm not listening to you," and kind of thing.
That's
And
right. That
there were
was the
some that
most
were,
tense
yeah,
day. No, you're right. That is the most tense day on the
yeah,
set
yeah.
when a crew member gets a bunch of these shirts made and they wear them for half a day. And then Ridley Scott had an answer shirt back. He got word that they
Yeah,
were doing this, that the crew was basically staging their own quiet rebellion. And it got word that they were doing this. And then he wore an admiral's cap, just everything
that said "Gov" on it, I
to
think.
make himself look like that governor.
Yeah,
Say that again.
I think it had "Gov" on that
Right.
on the top of that.
A
But
glove on that. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So when they it's and I think that was maybe his acknowledgement. Yes, in a sense, I hear you. I'm not sure I buy all your ideas. That I am a governor, that
yeah,
I'm not sure I accept it, but at least it's like he heard the crew and realized. And one of his producers kept saying, "If you just tell them they're doing a good job, Ridley, it would help." But but that's not him.
no,
And but the ones that the when listening to the people, and I'm sure you saw this too, the people that came along with him, it's once they were all come along with him into that level of obsessed miserableness. I mean, it's obsessed, it's wonderful, it's incredible, but those people that came along with him just viewed it as this is an incredible job and we've got to get it done no matter what it takes. And oh man, that's you can yeah, there's nobody in the middle. It's interesting. Some of the
yeah, that's
crew was
true.
like, "Oh, this is a job, it's killing us." And then the other folks were just 100% believers. And
Yeah.
but thank God. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you got to just say this is his vision, and
Well,
it's
it was Ridley
unbelievable.
Scott's film, certainly, although Harrison Ford said that it was probably the worst movie experience he's ever had, and had to be talked out of killing Ridley Scott before the filming was over.
Oh, that's yeah. The documentary was made 25 years later, and I think it took 25 years for Harrison Scott to kind of mellow out some to where he could gently talk about Ridley Scott. Yeah, yeah. That's but
It's
yeah.
interesting how many roles that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, what were you going to say? How many roles?
Well, it was interesting how many roles Harrison Ford has played in this few years. He's, never heard of except in real bit parts, and then he's in Star Wars, and they put him in this. They put him in Blade Runner, in Blade Runner, and in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and
Yeah,
he
Indiana
starts just
Jones.
doing everything, and
And I'd
and
forgotten he was and he's worked for Francis Ford Coppola
yeah,
in The Conversation and in Apocalypse Now. And then he worked for Ron Howard, who I'm sure appreciated him, one of his earliest films in American Graffiti. And
yeah,
then he gets to work with Spielberg and Lucas. Talk about and I think all those directors worked with him,
yeah,
nurtured him, and wanted to that's right, it comes out they developed the character together, and Ridley Scott did not want to do any of those things. Work with you, nurture you necessarily, develop the character, get together. It was, you're a professional, you come out. I think they end up working together a lot, but
yeah.
very different director than, like you said, all the experiences he's had are
Yes.
completely different than this.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
But there's another thing to Philip K. Dick, who wrote "Do Androids Dream of Electronic Sheep," which is this is based on, died before the film was done, but he did see the first 20 minutes of
Oh,
footage, and he said
he
that
did.
he mentioned that Harrison Ford was probably the most Deckard that he could have ever expected. He was amazed at just how well he played it.
They had a special effects loop that they ran twice even for Philip K. Dick, and he said, "This is my world. You have visualized it exactly the way, brought it to life." You're exactly right, blown away. And then I did not know that. That's neat to hear. He loved that version of Deckard because the original screenwriter was thinking Robert Mitchum, who was still
Yeah.
alive in 1982. But wow, would that have been a different film? Robert Mitchum, and then they also looked at Dustin Hoffman a lot as before Harrison Ford came on.
Yeah,
And
I really can't see that. I mean, we've seen Dustin Hoffman in a number of roles, but I can't see him as the hard boiled type. That doesn't
no,
track.
it was like shaking hands. I just can't. I just can't. Famous line from I just can't see. No, exactly right. Apparently, they did some of the storyboards of the character, early storyboards. He really does look like Dustin Hoffman. Oh man, no, they got this so right.
Are you
But
trying to seduce me, Pris?
say it again.
Are you trying to seduce me, Pris? I can see the line coming.
Exactly. Yeah. It just no. That would not have worked. Oh yeah, the different part. I thought it's funny. Apparently, casting Sean Young was she was a relative unknown, and I thought Ridley Scott made the right call there. I
Yes.
can't remember who he was thinking of. I saw the screen test, but Sean Young just and oh, the way they did the lighting. We talked about all the onset stuff. Cronenworth, the cinematographer, just incredible. And to get the light, I think that's an onset. I don't think they did any digitizing for the light in their eyes. And when you see the owl and
No, it was an interesting effect. It was done practically. They put a piece of glass in front between the camera and the subject, and when it had basically it was a controlled lens flare, I think, that caused the eyes to be that way. But that was a very spooky element.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
The office scene. I mean, here we the effects, the effects of the cityscape are just mind-boggling. You got matte works, and for the matte work, of course, you have to it's all in camera. You shoot it, you block off part of the frame that's black, you shoot the part that's say if a person is down here or people are walking, we talked about this before, people are walking here, this part's blacked out, and then you shoot it again and black off this part, and then this part becomes a part that we're seeing over here in this corner might be a matte painting of a cityscape. So that could be 2 passes, maybe 3 passes. They did over 20 passes sometimes.
And I say destroyed some of the film doing it.
That's right. The film would explode in the camera. The film would literally shred in the camera with the number of passes, because I used to do this with a Super 8 camera, and you would basically the same kind of effect. Black out a part, film one part where one part's blacked out, then so this part gets shot the first time, but then what I would do is tape off on the inside of the camera. I would tape off the part of the camera that would collect the film. I'll show you. They don't do this in with feature films. Whoa, hang on.
Let me cut to me just for a moment.
Here we go.
All right, you're almost there.
Don't do this. Almost. This is a different type of camera, but it's the same principle. And this is a Super 8 camera. You pop open the side, you put the film in, and this is the take-up reel. You put this is I read this in Super 8 film is how I got started with doing this, but it really does kind of explain that work. You tape this where the film does not get taken up. Instead, it collects at the bottom of the cartridge, about 8 seconds worth. And so what I could do is, if I film this part of the frame, then what lasted for 8 seconds, this part would be blacked off. This part I'd maybe show people walking along, and then I would take out my roll of Super 8 film in total darkness. You had to do this in total darkness, and with your finger, pull back the film which was about maybe 3 feet of film, 2 or 3 feet of film in the cartridge so that you could shoot it again. Then you put the film back in the camera and close it up. And then where I had blacked it off, I could shoot. But the thing was, you couldn't move your camera. If you move your camera at all, then you get this weird ghost-like effect of where things didn't match up. So when they're doing all these passes, like you said, if I've got one shot at doing this. I can do what I just did one time. They're doing it in big 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter cameras, and they can make the film roll back and forth. But when you do it 20 times, like you mentioned, it shreds. It can shred. And all that work of, perfect timing. Question for you, when they're doing this stuff and they're shooting it in the camera and they're running the film back, we had areas blacked off, were they using computer control cameras at that time too? Was it
they had to be.
They also,
they had to be.
Yeah. Because what I described has got to be locked down. I couldn't move it at all. I mean, the best I could do is lock it down. Try not to move the tripod when I'm taking out the film in total darkness. You do when you're doing this. But yeah, what they did. Yeah, but then they're moving the camera and doing these passes. It's mind blowing. It's just incredible.
The other thing was that in addition to the special effects shots, they did have the background, the pyramids that were blowing fire out of them, things like that, were shot in forced perspective.
Right.
And so they had and that's another little movie trick that they were able to do.
Oh, incredible movie trick with all those things that look like oil towers, some sort of weird, strange light tower. Those were printed up pieces of metal, and in daylight they look nothing like they do in the film when it's backlit and dark with fire and smoke. But the actual little props, and you're exactly right. I love the idea of forced perspective. Like, I use my fingers again. See, I'm not gonna. Just a good shot. To think about forced perspective, I think about it's a shot in The Apartment with the movie The Apartment with Jack Lemmon, and the idea is it shows how many desks are that he's working. He's a robot. He's a cog in this giant. It's almost like in a sense, it's kind of like the company, the Tyrell Company. If you're working for
Right.
If you're an accountant for the Tyrell Company in that pyramid building, you could imagine that midway through that building, there's a whole floor of accountants. And the way they showed Jack Lemmon in The Apartment as part of being an accountant was forced perspective. They showed him as his desk right up front, and then other people around him. But to make the room look gigantic, they made the desks smaller and smaller as you go back. And they started putting little people at the desks the further you go back. So the effect is it looks like, they did
the same thing in the Star Trek movie in engineering. The engineers were shot in forced perspective. There was a ramp actually that was going up, and the chamber was getting smaller as they went back, and they had 3 people, one shorter than the next one, all the way back, but it wasn't nearly as large a set as it looked like. It was all forced perspective.
Looks gigantic. It sells for me. I did not realize that was forced perspective Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well, that's the idea. And I just thought kind of going over that, because we'll throw out that term, but there might be, I'm thinking some people forced perspective, and but that's what it is. It makes rooms look gigantic. So right in this, the entire room for LA in 2019, what LA looks like in 2019. I mean, it looks like they're using a football stadium to shoot.
Yes.
And I think the whole set was only 20 feet long, something like that, 15, 20, a lot of plywood. I mean, it was big, but still it was not, that whole set was not 100 feet deep or anything like that. It was.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously
but yeah,
they
and
spent their money not on building sets, but rather on the matte shots, the special effects mostly is what brought that up, because at that time, well, I imagine Harrison Ford got a pretty good chunk of that. But in fact, I think that there was one actor, maybe Rutger Hauer, who said that he gave up his salary for 2% of the movie gross.
wow, to
Yeah,
be able to that, yeah,
because
so
he thought it was
it
that good. It's
made,
still his
yeah,
favorite film.
taking right. Oh, he loves that film. He loves that. What he contributed to that film is immeasurable. Um, but yeah, those forced and we'll get back to Rutger Hauer for sure. But those forced perspective sets are just phenomenal, and it all works. It looks huge. And did you? And apparently, that pyramid caught fire at a certain point. The model actually caught fire. But the good
It
news
would
is
have
they
surprised
were
me if it
90.
hadn't.
Yeah, it had tons of what would that have been? Cathode wiring, or the little it's it was the because even in '82 you had that kind of lighting where the little small wires, and at the very end of that little would, instead of a classic little tiny light bulb, they had they almost like small LED bulbs. I can't remember what they were. Some where it looks like mesh, almost like fishing line, and at the end of the fishing line you got these little lights,
Oh
and
yeah,
they had that
fiber
pyramid
optic,
building. Say it again.
fiber optic.
That's what it was. Thank you. Fiber optic. It was stuffed full of that stuff. I didn't realize that we had that in '82. But yeah, the building was stuffed full of fiber optics. And then they would use 10,000 watt lights. 10K.
Yike.
Yeah, and that's, films use 20K. But 10K lights in that, and so we were messing around with it, and they realized all of a sudden things are getting really hot in here. Whoops, there's smoke, and that's why. And on the other side of that, the set for the iLab really got to be dangerous, where they were making the eyeballs. They were using arc carbon lighting, basically like a welding torch, which they were in lighting that scene, and it
They
really
had
is
to. They were
freezing. They're
actually in a
inside
freezer. They were in an industrial freezer to film that, and it was as cold as they acted like it
yeah,
was.
and it was that cold. They could shoot for about 20 minutes. Things would start to freeze. Oil, the the oil and the motors of the film cameras, everything starts to freeze. And then they're lighting it with arc carbon. Basically, they described it's kind of like coal. And so it's burning the oxygen and emitting, I guess, carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, at least, emitting bad stuff. They didn't,
Yeah.
and they said they got sick after all. They had to be very careful, and they learned from experience. They got sick. Okay, we can't shoot this long. That scene is unbelievable. That's
Yes.
but
Once again, we say nothing of the plot here, because it was
right.
so minimal to what the rest of the film was. The film was fantastic, but it was one of these kind of things. It could have been a silent film as far as the visual element was concerned. But I was thinking about the use of eyes in this. I mean, from the very first scene where you have an eye focused on by the Voight-Kampff machine, and interestingly, that wasn't the eye of the subject. They were interviewing one of the workers or something. And what they did, actually,
Right.
it was one of the production people that used their eye for the magnified eye in the Voight-Kampff machine, which some people noticed he had different color eyes than the guy they were interviewing.
Oh, that's interesting. That is very interesting. Yeah, that's it. God, I think with so much another apparently the not Pris, but the other woman replicant who was very deadly had the snake dance, which apparently
Yes.
they got rid of from the film. There's when she gets killed in that incredible chase scene where she's wearing that kind of transparent jacket and she gets killed. Apparently, they used a wig. It's speaking of
Yeah.
mistakes that you almost can't see, she was so angry. They used a different hairpiece than that. She felt like it didn't match. But I think we don't notice some of the things like that because there's so much stuff going on
Yeah.
constantly in front of us in the mise en scène. It's just
Her name was Joanna Cassidy, and she played Zora. I don't know how much screen
exactly.
time she had, but they say that she was very self-conscious because she was in a transparent raincoat and running through the streets, otherwise unclothed except for this see-through raincoat.
See-through raincoat. Right, right. And they did get a stunt performer for her final sequence. And maybe
Yeah.
that was, I think that probably had to do with the headpiece on the stunt performer. But apparently she actually had a snake and could do a snake dance. And Ridley Scott just loved that idea, but he ends up cutting that from the film. He also cut, there may be more, but I know one thing I found out that he cut was a sequence where after Roy Batty kills Tyrell in the Tyrell building, and apparently they built a $20,000 head for him to squish. They did not use it, but even back then,
Yeah.
$20,000 in '82 built a prosthetic head for him to squish. They did not use it, but they had the idea of springs and wires and everything coming out of that head as if he was a replicant. Well, that gets cut because he's a human, and then they decided his creator would be 4 stories up at the top of the pyramid in a sarcophagus, just like a body sitting there. And they cut all of that. They storyboarded it. But what an interesting idea.
I thought it was an interesting idea, and once again, it goes back to this eye thing. The Rutger Hauer, kills him by pushing his eyes back in his head, and
Oh,
the eye reflection idea that they had earlier on. The guy that made Just Eyes, the idea that eyes see into the eyes reveal your soul kind of
right.
thing.
When
And there's a lot of that metaphor running through the film.
Oh, that's a good at speed. That is such a good point. That is where you have the and so when you see only the replicant's eyes, you get that weird reflection, the window of their soul. But what's fascinating is speaking of the story is at the end of the day, and it's a simple in a sense. I think even Harrison Ford said, "You've given me. You don't have to be the best detective in the world at all to solve this mystery." I mean, he finds the scales in the tub, and he manipulates that picture so that he gets more clues. He is a smart uh, Blade Runner detective on this chase. But there's another level. I think Harrison Ford was saying, I don't like all this narration because it's taking away from my being a detective by having you narrate and just show me doing these things instead of having the narration of me doing these things.
Yeah.
But but yeah, getting back to that story, the eyes and the windows of the soul, just like you mentioned, whose soul? I think so. It's a simple detective story, but what makes it, I think, more profound on repeat viewings is we're looking at whose soul is more human. Who's more
Yeah.
human at the end of this day? At the end of the day, and one writer, really good writer, actually a friend of Dr. Ross, J.P. Patella, writing about replications. Of course,
Yeah.
replications going to have a lot about robots, replicants, and he mentions that by 1982, and you could argue this has happened. You look at Metropolis; it's talking about men being turned into machines, but by '82, you could say in society we do feel like we're robots at some point. We do our jobs. We wake up at a certain time. We conform so much to the things we have to do. We become robotic in our
Right.
lives. And he mentions that to show us that we're humans, you really have to have with this series of films that comes out in the '80s, Cherry 2000, RoboCop, Blade Runner, all these films mash the human against the android or against the robotic figure, and
Right.
it takes that for us to realize what it takes to be human. And this film is the best of all because there's Rutger Hauer's speech at the end, which is all about who's the human being. Is it the robotic like killer Deckard, or is it Rutger Hauer, who's appreciating every second of life he's got, even to the point he gives life? He gives
Yeah.
life. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
and I understand that he changed the read, the original script I have here in the trivia that says what he was supposed to have said, but what he said was much more poetic. And I think that that's something also that Ridley Scott generally was against, anything that was too literate and poetic, more to get down into the grunge kind of thing. But I think that it was just the perfect time for someone to wax in a poetic, introspective type of thing, which, yeah, proves that perhaps the humanity is not restricted to humans.
if that film doesn't have, you nailed it. If that film does not have this speech, it loses that comparison of who's human versus who's not. One writer even talks about the Christ-like uh, things because Rutger Hauer has driven a nail through his hand, very
Yeah,
much like Christ, and like Christ gives life. And then Deckard, there was some similar things. I can't remember. There was some other cross-like imagery
hmm,
at the end. But and so that's building up, and that's there in the set, and Rutger Hauer just feeding on that. I'm looking up that exact uh, Tears in the Rain on it. It's got its own Wikipedia page,
yeah,
and the action. Yeah, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've watched sea gleams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. Time to die, and Tears in the Rain. All that part of it was not that part is all Rutger Hauer,
yeah,
and absolutely makes the film. And thank goodness, like you pointed out, Ridley Scott let up and said,
yeah.
"Okay,
At least we could give him credit for seeing good when it was good. Uh,
right,
the The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is that Edward James Olmos was one of the top billed characters. And how much screen time did he actually get? 5 minutes?
yeah." That's I can't. When I think of Edward James Olmos, I think of this as maybe a breakout film for him. But so obvious, so he's done some obviously previous work before this. It's that's funny for me. I'm always thinking of him as this as being one of his starter roles, and apparently he developed the language. He said, "Okay, if we're speaking this city speak language, this amalgamation of Japanese, maybe German, Spanish,
Right.
uh, I'm gonna make it make sense." And so he came up with phrases and words.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, it's a small part, but of course, it's a very memorable one.
Oh,
He's someone who's thinking that Deckard should have
so
stayed retired, and let you know his perturbance about that in no uncertain terms.
right, right. He wants to rise up and become a Blade Runner. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Oh, and of course he leaves. When did I was thinking of his origami figures. When does the unicorn come into play? I got to admit, I, I mean, in terms of,
that was the last
uh,
one when he left, he left it in Deckard's apartment,
right,
which I
right, he
think is
leaves in Deckard's
one of
apartment.
the reasons that people thought that Deckard was a replicant when they, the fans started talking about this film. That this unicorn, this someone who's completely different than anything else. This
Right,
this
right, and so that was not used in the theatrical cut, and
Yeah,
uh, part of it, and this is we've done it. Done some investigating, but I did not. So was it somewhere? Because no, so theatrical cut, no unicorn. Um, there's a director's cut in 91, 10, 11 years, no, 9 years later, or 92, and I'm trying to remember, was there a unicorn in that cut, or does the
Oh
unicorn
Lord.
come in later?
This film has
It might have been in the
more different versions than I've ever seen of anything.
Oh,
And so it's hard to keep straight, having seen all of them, between what was called the director's cut, which was not the director's cut, and the final cut, which was the director's cut. And then
right,
the
which was the
theatrical.
director's cut, and
Right.
then there's a work print cut,
Yes.
and then there's a U.S. theatrical version and a international theatrical version.
Yes.
So yeah, at some point I kind of get lost with where the unicorn idea, but right, and then that is the idea that Deckard may be a replicant, just like when they were making like Tyrell, and that I'm glad they did not do that. That as much as I love deleted scenes, I love extra ideas, and it could have been neat, but the idea of Tyrell being no, I think and he's got to be human for this and do the evil idea, the terrible evil idea of making replicants. That's got to be something. Humans got to originate that, and it's
Yeah.
so much more impactful instead of a dead guy in a sarcophagus that that does that.
Or
But
suspended
the
animation, whatever they had. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, we probably because come to think of it, he probably wants to live forever, just like the owner of the corporation from Alien, who we see in Prometheus.
That's true.
Behind everything is his desire to live forever. But that's oh god, what?
Let's talk about William Sanderson. Now, while Rutger Hauer made the movie, William Sanderson was the most interesting to watch. Where
Right.
he is the genetic designer. He has this kind of yokel accent that he actually has, and this is long before Larry and the Darryls.
That's
But
because I'm thinking Larry and the Darryls. That's
you
exactly
do,
right.
you
Yeah.
do. But his idea, and the same kind of accent that did not work in The Black Hole is perfect here, where
Absolutely.
you have him as the genetic designer. He lives in the Bradbury building. His genetic designs come and meet him. Home again, jiggity jig, which is from Mother Goose, and they're not quite human looking. Obviously played by humans, but the dressed up as Napoleon and a couple of other things. And he mentions to Pris, "I make my friends," which I thought was a great line.
Right. Ah, the- I needed to on my rewatch. I did pop back. I should never have popped back past the scene. I've seen the film several times, but it always helps to just have it right here in the brain.
Yes.
And so in the scene in the Bradbury building with his constructions, do we see? Here's where I'm getting at. By the time we actually see little people in uniforms, like the Napoleonic stuff, by the time we see that surrounding him, and then they're walking out, to me, they are the perfect android. They're the perfect early version or semi replicant.
Yeah.
They feel, in my mind, like perfect robots. I'm not thinking that those are people, in suits. It just works. To get to that point in his apartment, do we see some mechanistic stuff like early versions of these things? In my back of my mind, I'm thinking heads turning. Well, now Pris's heads turn because she's basically one of those creations. And oh my goodness, yeah, she said in her the way she got the part. Apparently, auditioning took all day, and they gave actors some choices how they're going to play this thing.
Yeah.
And so she decides, in her interpretation of Pris, to go with the black makeup, hair crazy. She finds a blonde wig that's in the wardrobe so she decks herself out like that.
Yes.
and she's also a gymnast from high school and actually did those flips.
Yeah,
And
that works out.
that was
And
enough
and
for
another eye thing by doing the raccoon look is once again emphasizing the eyes. But yeah,
that's for
I know
the
what you're
eyes.
talking about. The apartment, it was very busy, so it's hard to tell
Right.
exactly what was there. But the one thing that I noticed, and it caught me because we'd done this in chemistry class. You ever have in high school in chemistry class they show you how to boil cold water? You put
No.
it's a chemical that you can drop in water that will cause it to boil at room temperature. And so they have it boiling eggs, and she's able to reach in and grab, a boiled egg without burning herself, which of course, it was one of the few times I knew what kind of effect they were really doing.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's the opposite of where the one of the early models reaches in and into in the freezing unit. That's another way of realizing they're replicants because the water's so cold. Here it's boiling, and I'm just thinking in that apartment there maybe there's something is kind of overtly mechanical because in some respects the owl kind of looks mechanical from Tyrell's office. I mean, it's not meant to; it just kind of does. And I was thinking because at some point I make the leap as a viewer to these creepy things are completely replicants. I'm not thinking that there's motors or anything. They just feel like biological complete replicants.
Yeah.
Perfection. Yeah.
Well,
That William
there was
Sanderson's making.
that was one of the other things I think Scott was kind of working with, whether to make the owl real because they're so rich, or a replicant because owls don't exist anymore.
That's a good point. And the owls don't exist, which is getting back to our. That is one thing that Blade Runner 2049 picked up on was that the environment's even worse. And I thought I like that film, but the first one is so rich. Just
Yeah.
it's hard to beat. Yeah, you don't even want to compare. I do like Blade Runner 2049 a lot, but having seen and just looked into this film even more, it's so rich
Blade Runner
and
2049 was good because you could go back into that world they created, but I didn't
right.
see that the plot was any better than it was in the original. I mean, there
That's
were moments in the original that are absolute classics with J.F. Sebastian, with the chess game in which he meets Tyrell, which is modeled after the Pope's bedroom, interestingly. And then there were moments in there that were just classic, and but all put together, yeah, it was just a two-bit detective film. Okay, we're gonna zoom in on
Yeah.
this Polaroid shot until it gets into that had to have 1 million pixels in it in order for it to be able to look around the corner and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was a clever kind of thing, and it makes you want one of those things to take your picture and crop and do. And you can do some of that with photoshopping now, but certainly once you get to a certain point, it's just barely noticeable as to what the picture's of.
That's a great point. That is a great and you're also talking about the second one too. That's they try to hit some philosophical. They try to make some good philosophical points with
Yeah, I get
Kay
that.
and who and his humanity, but they don't have that tears in the rain moment,
Yeah.
and that's what Blade Runner would be like if it didn't have the tears in the rain moment. It just nails it with that.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what you could say about a lot of great films is that they have certain moments in them that are unforgettable. It's the last
Right.
scene in Casablanca.
Right.
We'll always have
Absolutely.
Paris. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. It
Yes.
probably would not have been as good a film without those little moments. And otherwise, I mean, a fantastic film, but we've talked about that before. But I think that's what made this film was the fact that it has a number of memorable moments in it. I still want an umbrella that has a light on the
Right.
stem. That seems to be a real good idea that nobody's ever caught up on.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That is a wow. It's amazing nobody's because it's always dark, and so
Yeah.
that would just save you having to hold the flashlight. Nobody's invented that yet. That's
Yeah, that was the other thing. Ridley Scott said that the problem of having to film at night was that you have lunch at like 1 a.m. and after that nobody's worth anything, because
Oh,
even if they sleep during the day, there's a certain time of night where I used to work overnights early in my career, that somewhere between 1 and 2 a.m. you're at your least efficient.
right, right. That is,
Just
no matter how much you sleep in the day, it's
yeah,
still, there's a time, but 2 a.m., 4 a.m., you're just toast. And they
yeah,
were working hard in those hours. Apparently, the last scene they shot was basically it was the Tears in the Rain sequence with the dove, and Rutger Hauer may have had that idea too, to have the dove that just kind of,
they couldn't make the
appeared.
dove, they couldn't make the dove fly
It
when he
got
would
so wet
release.
it couldn't fly.
Right.
There's so much rain, and so he releases it. And on the documentary, you can just see it waddle around
Yeah.
after he,
So they had to
he
shoot a
had to.
different dove flying, and then just, they faded into it.
They couldn't do that in a one take. That's exactly, they had to cut
Yeah.
to a dove fly, and that sky was so symbolic for everybody because they had worked almost. I think they had worked basically 24 hours because the producers, the money men said, "This is it. You got 2 days. We're done. We're we know that you're 95% in the can. Got this thing shot, and you have got 2 days." So basically, they filmed, I think, almost 25 straight hours. Did some interiors so that they could keep on shooting during the day,
Mhm.
and then go back to finish up exteriors at night. Right, with Rutger Hauer sitting outside with the dove, and when it starts to get light, then symbolically it's perfect because that's the
Yeah.
end of the film, and we're ending this nightmare. This world is getting a little different shape to it. Maybe Deckard's, with his eyes, like you keep pointing out, with his eyes, seeing his humanity, and then can have the ending, which was, how do you feel about the original ending? Because it kind of going from this light where they're actually shooting, the dove gets released, and then Deckard is allowed to. He goes off into a car, drives off to a happy ending with Rachel. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
I think they could have ended the film, yeah, with the dove, and let you
Okay.
figure out what else is going to happen after that. Because I mean, that was you're not going to top that. All you're going to do is just say, okay, everybody go home before the crowd start leaving the theater. It's there wasn't anything after that that was really worth watching, and the fact that they used stock footage for the last scene anyway was just about as well.
From The Shining, like we just looked up.
Yeah.
From The Shining, Ridley Scott. Yeah, apparently they have a test screening, and the producers say, "You have got to have a happy ending. Give me some hope. Give me something. Give me." And so he comes up with the idea of getting in the car, and Ridley Scott was not interested in shooting any mountains, but he knew that Stanley Kubrick had shot a lot of mountain footage for The Shining, and so they use that, and, and that's the end of the film. And that's its
There you
one
go.
appearance.
And that's what you
Yeah,
get
they
when you
never use
have
that again.
television producers making a movie. Bud Yorkin, for instance, I mean, he was one of the producers of All in the Family. They shot it on a stage and one set, and that was it. And you don't have that same kind of restriction in doing movies. And I think that when TV people do movies, they tend to be just a little bit more. What's the word I'm looking for? Cheap.
Right. That's the word you're looking for. That's exactly right. What a yeah, and that's yet another. You look at, from Tron to this film, some of the strange backers, the people you would not expect. Disney behind Tron, doing it is anything but Disney. Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
those guys working over there, and yet it's Disney. And here you got Bud Yorkin, who worked with Norman Lear to do All in the Family, and they were one of the of different, I think different studios were going out of business by 82.
Yeah.
They were having trouble raising the money, so they come up with this amalgamation of producers, and I think they love the idea, the creativity, but at some point that TV cheapness starts to come into play.
It does.
And yeah, it's amazing it got made. It is just incredible. Your eyes thing, another thing, in teaching film theory, we always talk about how we kind of look at film theory through the senses, and we use I'm so glad you brought up the eyes too, because the textbook in film theory uses that scene with the eyes to get film students, to be thinking about how important perception is, that just the sense of perception. And that film, you pointed out so many ways that eyes are highlighted in the film. It is just fascinating. I'm trying to scratch my head trying to think of any more ways that eyes are highlighted.
There's one more in the building where they go to see the eye designer. There's a optician, and it's one of the ones that were common in California at the time. It's like LensCrafters or something that was right next door to it. So they're still in the eyes there. Yeah.
Eyes all over and then their eyes, the eyes of the ads when you're flying through Los Angeles, and all those giant boards, digital imagery. That, of course, was, we didn't have that in '82, and that was brilliant of them to see their future worlds are going to have advertisements just like that, like we have today. And the Japanese woman that is watching, those eyes are so prominent. You're being watched, and it's not doesn't necessarily show you're being watched, but it's you could go to off-world, to the colonies, and those ads are just incredible.
Now, I understand in every cut of this film, they have a different narration for that commercial that's flying by on the dirigible.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Different narration.
We won't go into it. It'd take me forever to find it, but it's in there.
I think speaking of narration, I think the directors, I have been watching the director's cut from 2007 more than, especially than the theatrical cut. And so when we went back to watch the theatrical cut, there was more narration there than I remembered. I think there's less narration and just general narration of the story in the 2007.
Yeah. Now, we talked a lot about Harrison Ford not liking the narration, but apparently Ridley Scott was thinking about putting it in anyway, and it just happened that the studio's version of it isn't what he liked. But he had thought that it might help it to put some explanatory stuff in it.
Interesting. And I got to admit, I did not think it was that bad listening to it. I kind of enjoyed the narration.
I did too. I thought it gave a real 40s film noir detective kind of thing in there. Although the actual 40s film noir movies never had the narration, but that seems to be what we always think about when we see that.
Doesn't it feel like they do? I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm thinking, in the 40s, did they have that? It feels like they do, but they don't. There's not that. No. I'm sure there's some, but it's not as prominent as we think.
It's in the radio shows, because there are a lot of detective radio shows, and yours truly, Johnny Dollar, had a lot of voiceover stuff. Well, I mean voiceover, a lot of narrative elements to it, and various others. I think even the Sam Spade series that was on the radio had this kind of background narration.
That's where that comes from. And then we just transpose it to the movie.
Yeah.
Wow. That's well, speaking of narration and sound, what did you think of the soundtrack? Blade Runner.
Vangelis. That was before New Age music became a thing. Vangelis was experimenting around with electronic type of music. He and Wendy Carlos were together in the soundtrack for Chariots of Fire. Right. And at that time, Walter Carlos, I think that was before his transition. But at any rate, this once again, this futuristic sounding music, this electronic and yet not this kind of electronic music you always hear, the stereotypical stuff, which doesn't have any melody to it. This actually did. In fact, it kind of
Right.
borrowed from popular music. I think one of the songs, Brazil, for instance, I believe was kind of sampled in this.
I'll be right, right. But right, and when you hear it by itself, you realize, aha, there is a melody to it.
Yeah.
But it's not like Chariots of Fire where you can remember, like you mentioned that name, and all of a sudden I'm going da, 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 da. Yeah,
Yeah.
badly. I have no sense of pitch, but you know you can think of the melody. But I really couldn't think of a distinct melody to Blade Runner unless I were to hear the CD or the just the music itself again.
It was much more subtle, I
Because
think.
having much more subtle, but it works perfectly. Yeah.
Yes.
Ah,
Once again, the whole film is about atmosphere, and it does it just in abundance.
right, right. I can't think of another. There are films in the back of my mind. I'm thinking the film where you just mentioned the set design is the main actor. Forbidden Planet, which is in some respects close. That set design's fantastic.
Yes.
It takes a spot as a main actor at points, but to just dominate through the whole film, it's Blade Runner.
It's almost sensory overload when you think about it. Of all the things you see at once, you see the cityscape, you see the nighttime, you see the rain, the smoke, the people, the all of the elements in there. It just it's almost overwhelming.
There's a shot that where I'm trying to remember where it is. It's at the point where Deckard is investigating. Nobody's dead. All the replicants, I think, are still alive. It's early on. Oh, he's been to the apartment, or he's going to the apartment where the replicant, I can't remember his name, but a really good, prominent actor. He's
Oh yeah.
the first one that we see. He kills the guy that's doing the Voight Comp test at the beginning, and so he in
That was Leon, right?
he tells the guy where he Leon, right?
Yeah,
Leon tells the guy where he lives.
Brian James was the actor.
Oh, good. And he unfortunately he passed away in '99, I think.
Yeah.
But Deckard is going to that apartment, and at a certain point, we pull back from the apartment, and people run past. I mean, just the use of extras, all those people in the mise en scène, they run back, and then there's fires on the sidewalk. These little fires. That's another element. You know, the fires on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's almost like pictures of Hong Kong that I've seen, you know, where they cook things along the road. There's a lot of push cart stuff. And then, of course, everything is so crowded and so densely packed.
Exactly. Just every detail of that is phenomenal. And so you can see why they only got 3, 4, 5 shots done in one day.
Yeah.
Because everything has got to line up, be smoking, be on fire, raining. It's raining on the fire, but everything's got to work.
And it does. You know, Ridley Scott actually wanted to film this in Hong Kong, and they said, no, not enough money.
That would have been perfect. And that, of course, you're looking at 82. You're looking at the beginning of multinational globalism, whatever you want to call it, multinational economics. And so, of course, what are the prominent players? There's Germany at the time is West Germany, but we're kind of fearful. There's the Japanese, and their economy is really, and so it reflects all this multinational sense of capital that's happening. Only it reflects the true working person side of that instead of what you see both. And the interesting thing is you see extreme wealth and a lot of poverty and not a lot in between. There's not, there's no healthy, what the name of the show?
You don't have a dystopia with a middle class.
Say it again.
You don't have a dystopia with a middle class. That just can't work.
With a middle, well, that ought to be a chapter head to get a book. I like that. You don't have a dystopia with a middle class. That's exactly right.
You can have that for your next one. We need to go.
Yeah.
We're just
Thank
we're
you.
just we're out of time on this time, but and there's so much more that we could have probably said
Oh,
about
it's
Blade
so much
Runner. It would
fun.
fill volumes, but always interesting to talk with you. Oh, that's Professor O in Oklahoma, and we'll be back with you in 2 weeks. We're not going to be here next week. I'm going to be on vacation, so we'll be back in 2 weeks, and I guess we'll pick up Alien now. We were talking about doing both of them at once, but realized that both of them really had too much in them to do just one video on. So that's our plan.
That's a nice way to put that. That
All right.
right.
Thank you, Professor. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
My
And
pleasure.
we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, don't go far.